Thank you for taking the time to listen to this mega session recording on understanding the Principal Act. Whether you weren't able to join us in Mobile for the conference or you're just wanting to revisit the key information that we covered, we are glad you're here. We're going to go over some of those important updates and information that was discussed during the session so you won't miss a thing. If you want to go ahead and grab the slides, a copy of these slides, you can type in that link below or you can scan that QR code. My name is Anna Shepherd Jones, and I'm with the Alabama State Department of Education, and it's my privilege to help support the implementation of the Principal Act and the APLDS program. And that stands for the Alabama Principal Leadership Development System. So let's go ahead and get started. The ultimate goal of the APLDS program is to increase the effectiveness of our school administrators so that we can see those improved academic outcomes for each and every one of our students. So how do we know if this program is in fact working? The law is very specific about what those measures of success are. So we'll be taking a look at principal retention rates. So we're building up the leadership capacity in our school administrators, but also keeping you there so that you can maximize your impact at the school. We'll also be looking at school climate. So for this, we've got new surveys that we just sent out in spring 2025. It's called the Alabama School Climate Surveys. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but that's going to be our measure for program evaluation purposes. And then lastly, we'll take a look at those report card indicators, achievement and growth. When we talk about the APLDS program, there's several different components involved to really serve as a comprehensive system of support, and that's represented by the program icon. The first huge component in place that went into place last year were new standards for practicing principals and assistant principals, and really is the keystone to all the other components of the APLDS program, because all those other components are being designed to help deepen your understanding and practice in these standards, these new leadership standards. Another component is the Alabama Principal Leadership Framework. We'll talk about that today and how you can use that resource to help you understand and implement the new standards. And then lastly, what we put into place is a new principal mentoring program. This is a program that we have in partnership with CLASS that provides that one-on-one mentor support for new principals. Now, this isn't designed for somebody who is new to the district or maybe even new as a principal to Alabama. This is intended to be a program for somebody who's never been a principal before. They are completely new to the principalship. And it's also not a program for new assistant principals. This is just designed for principals. Another component of the APLDS program is your participation in high quality professional learning from a state approved list. I want to make sure that you see that noted that that list is going to be updated every year. So I want to make sure that you know where to find the most current list. It should be labeled 2025-26 state approved list, and I'll show you where to find that information. Now in 2027-28, that's when the entire APLDS evaluation system will be implemented. The design team is currently working to develop that with national experts so that we can get that ready for you in a few years. But a part of that was implemented last year, and that's the professional learning plan. But that's not going to be the full evaluation system. And then by 2029-30, that we'll have an Alabama Leadership Academy, and this is going to be for principals and not assistant principals. And it's for existing principals. You'll be required to participate in a year-long leadership academy in order to continue to receive that Principal Act stipend. So this is how the law is designed, is that the program requirements are going to increase over time in order to keep getting this stipend. So let's get into those components in a little bit more depth. We talked about the goal of increasing principal effectiveness to increase positive school and student outcomes. So what are the leadership skills and behaviors that are associated with these positive outcomes? In other words, what do the most effective school leaders know and do? Well, they effectively set a vision and direction, ensure a rigorous and coherent system of curriculum, instructional strategies, and assessments that are aligned to those content standards. They have thoughtful, instructionally focused interactions with teachers and develop their staff. They also strategically manage personnel and resources, build those positive school climates through relationships for students, teachers, parents, and the community, and they innovate by engaging in reflective practices to drive their own professional growth and then apply their new learning to drive that positive change. So the law refers to these different areas as the five domains of principal effectiveness, and these are your five standards. So if you hear the Alabama Standards for School Leadership and the five domains of principal effectiveness, we're talking about the same thing. And you can see that these five domains, these five standards, are on the outside rim of the APLDS logo. And again, because that's the driver for all these different components that are being developed, because we know that the most effective principals and assistant principals attend to these five different areas of leadership. They've got to be that visionary leader, instructional leader, managerial and operational leader, relational and innovative leader. Now, where can you find those standards? You can find them by going to the website, alabamaprinciples.org. And if you're not familiar with this website, I hope you go ahead and pull it up on your computer and go ahead and bookmark it, because this is going to be a one-stop shop of all the information that you need related to the APLDS program and the Principal Act, including these standards. So there's a tab at the top that says standards. You'll click on that and be able to access both the digital and printed version. Now let's talk about some terminology. So you've got five standards. Those are the five domains of principal effectiveness. And these standards also include indicators that elaborate the practices that are necessary to meet the standard. So there are 30 indicators. So five standards and then 30 indicators. And as you begin to read through these new professional standards, I hope you see what I see, and that they're a really good, solid set of standards. The team did a really good job of creating them to really ensure that there's clarity and understanding, and it defines the nature and expectations of what we know an effective school leader should be able to do based off of current research and best practices. So what are those critical things that you need to focus on so that you can impact student learning and see those other positive school outcomes? So they're easy to understand and clearly defined set of standards. So the team did a really good job. So the Alabama Principal Leadership Framework is a resource available to you that's grounded in those new standards, the Alabama Standards for School Leadership. And I love how the design team described what they want this resource to be for you. They want it to be a playbook to help you develop and empower school leaders throughout your career pathway. So it doesn't matter if you're an aspiring leader or a retiring leader, you can pick this up and find something for you. So I love that phrase, though, of how they describe it as a playbook, right? And just like with any playbook, you're not going to run every play. So when you go to the website and you click on framework link at the top, the framework page, again, that's alabamaprinciples.org. When you click and look at the entire framework, you're going to see it's about 138 pages. So please don't automatically just not want to even take a peek inside of this resource just because it's so much. It's not meant to run every play. It's not meant to run and read cover to cover, right? If you are just somebody who you think, hey, I need to firm up my practice in visionary leadership, that's just the information that you're going to go to. So it's not going to be necessarily that cover to cover reading. So we'll talk more about this so you can have a sense of all the information and the resources that are just at your fingertips and available to you. Now, once you access the framework, what you'll find is that there's an indicator map for each of those 30 indicators. Remember, we've got 5 standards and then 30 indicators. And in this indicator map, it will engage you in that reflective process of what do I need to know and be able to do in relation to that indicator. So, what are those key concepts and then those key actions and skills that are involved? And then that next question is okay, well, where am I now? Where am I now along a continuum of practice? So, we're used to seeing levels in different continuums of practice and in previous evaluation systems, so very similar to that. But now you've got four levels. You've got emerging leader, developing leader, effective leader, and transformational leader. And that next question, though, is where do I want to be? So let's say that I'm a developing leader in this particular area, in this particular indicator. Hey, that's okay because the whole point is to engage in that professional growth and engage in that process. So, what does it look like of being an effective leader? What's my target? And you'll see that in those descriptors. So you can look at that next step. Where do I want to be? If this is where I'm at, then where do I want to be? And then that critical question of how will I get there? So often we tell people this is what you need to do, or we're told this is what you need to do. And the question is, well, how? And so this is why it's such a comprehensive document because you're going to find example strategies, example evidence of growth that's really customized to the indicator, but also to your entry point, right? So if I need to get from developing to effective, what are some strategies that are specific for me of my level of readiness so that I can get to that very next step? So let's take a look at an example together. We're looking at Standard 1, Visionary Leadership, Indicator A. So we would refer to this as Standard 1A. And you'll see to the left, what do I need to know? So what are those big ideas with this particular indicator? And that's vision for teaching and learning. You'll see that language embedded a lot in the framework. In fact, it's language pulled directly from the law for us to address because that's an important piece of what you do as an effective leader is collaboratively develop that shared vision for teaching and learning. And then another big part is your ASIP, your Alabama Continuous Improvement Plan. What I want to point out here is that when you go to the framework, you're going to see lots of different hyperlinks embedded. And if you go and click on that ASIP link, it's going to take you to the platform that you need to go to every year to complete that ASIP, the Cognate Improved Strategies platform. And then to the right, again, it's just really unpacking those skills to help meet the indicator and standards. So just like our teachers unpack those learning standards for our students, those content standards, it's doing the same thing here for these professional standards. All right, and then you're going to see that continuum of practice, those four levels. And what I encourage you to do is start with effective. Read those descriptors and see, hey, does this really describe my current practice and understanding? And if it does, hey, bump over to transformational and see if that's a better description for you. If not, again, that's okay. Go back and read developing. And if not, if you're not quite developing, you go to emerging. And so that's how we encourage you to engage in reading through those different continuums of practice. Now, in the appendix of the framework, you'll find the self assessment tool where you can go ahead and engage in that reflective practice of where you are currently along that continuum of practice with those indicators. So that's in Appendix A, the self assessment tool. And then in Appendix B, you're going to find the continuum of practice descriptor. So I would recommend putting those side by side as you're thinking about your current knowledge and practice. And as you're thinking of that question, how will I get there? You're going to see some example strategies and example evidence of growth. And it's not just going to be tailored to that individual indicator, but what is your individual level of readiness? What's that entry point? So you're going to see that if you're emerging and you want to get to that very next level of developing, you're going to see strategies that focus on awareness and application. If you want to move from developing into effective, it's really going to be focusing on consistency and being very strategic. And to move from effective to transformational, that's when you're building up that leadership capacity in others and having that shared leadership. So I encourage you to take a look at all those different links We, as a state department, all the different sections and departments, we got together and talked and said, hey, what are some good resources and tools and protocols that you have in place that we can embed into that framework? So you're going to see lots of different resources that are available to you there. For each indicator, there are also some example strategies and considerations for district administrators in supporting your professional growth in those particular areas. And then, even more example strategies you'll see listed in the appendix that relate to that indicator. So, if there's an asterisk, you'll see that there's even more information in the appendix. And so, where this came from was that we asked principals and APs last year, what are the areas that you need even more support in? And so you'll find in the appendix, based off of the feedback we got and those topics, there are step by step protocols and resources and extra links, just even more information and opportunities for you to better deepen your practice. When you go to the alabamaprincipals.org website, you're going to see two different tabs that relate to high quality professional learning. There's going to be one tab that will provide professional learning guidelines, and an additional tab where you're going to find the current state approved list. Last year, there was just one tab for professional learning, and hopefully, separating these two out will just better increase the readability and the flow of how you're accessing and engaging in this website. So we'll talk about both of those right now. One guideline you'll find on the page of this website is that all state approved high quality professional learning for the APLDS program is awarded through the PowerSchool PL platform as APLDS clock hours. So it has to be awarded through our statewide professional learning platform that keeps track of the professional learning experiences that you've completed. And there are different credit types. So it can't just be regular clock hours or an ACL DPLU credit type. It must be APLDS clock hours. And that's a new credit type that we put into place last year so that it will make it much easier for you to track where you're at and towards meeting this program requirement. Another guideline is that you must complete at least 30 APLDS clock hours between June 1st, 2025 until the end of May. That's May 31st, 2026. So all of those APLDS clock hours must be completed within that time frame. Now, as a tip, when you look at the courses in the PowerSchool PL platform, you'll see a standard naming convention. It will say APLDS dash the professional learning provider, and it'll also include 2025-26 so that you know for sure that that is going to count towards this school year for the 2025-26 school year. So any professional learning that you participate in June 2026 is going to count towards the 2026-27 school year. Another guideline is that every state approved conference has a registration deadline in PowerSchool PL for receiving APLDS clock hours. And if you're not registered in PowerSchool PL by that deadline, unfortunately, credit will not be awarded after that deadline. So when you go to the state approved list, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, you'll find a section where you can go to conferences. When you click on that, you'll find a conference link for anything that's been state approved, and it'll give you step by step directions of what you need to do in order to earn APLDS clock hour credit. Every deadline is going to be different depending on when the conference is. Now, this requirement was also in place last year that elementary school administrators, that includes both principals and assistant principals, you're required to participate in early literacy professional learning if you have grades K through 3 on your campus, and early numeracy professional learning if you have grades K through 5 on your campus. So if you have grades K through 3, you will be required to participate in both early literacy and early numeracy. And the reason for that is that the Principal Act is tied to the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act. So when you look at the state approved list, you're going to see a filter where you can select early literacy or early numeracy so that you know what is being provided for you to meet these requirements. Another reminder is that if you have any questions or need further information about the session, so when it's being held, the location, are there upcoming offerings, that you can reach out to the professional learning provider to help support you. And if you also have questions about being awarded your APLDS clock hour credit, you can reach out to the professional learning provider as well. So you'll find on the state approved list that the contact person, the person's name and email address has been provided for you. So you know who to reach out to get that support. When you go to the state approved list, you'll see a message that automatically pops up, and that's to prompt you to remind you to go to that professional learning guidelines page for further information. Once you read it, you click I understand. When you're selecting professional learning, consider your PLP goals. What do you need to participate in to help you meet those goals? What about those standards? What areas do you need to really firm up your understanding and practice? And then your context, if that changes, you need to plan accordingly. But if you scroll down, you'll also see where you can search by professional learning type. So, for example, if you want to take a look at the conferences, you click on that link. And again, this is going to prompt you and show you another message to remind you that there are deadlines involved when it comes to the conferences. So, let's scroll down and let's take a look at a conference that a lot of folks attend, and that's Mega. So I'm going to click on the link for this particular conference, and it's going to give me even more information, step by step directions of what I need to do to make sure I get the APLDS clock hour credit, including those deadlines. Now, if you scroll down, you can also search by professional learning provider. For example, if I want to see what MTSS has to offer, I can search that way. I can go back to the prompts and I can select all, but then to the right, I can also search by early literacy professional learning to see what's going to meet the requirement if I'm an elementary principal or assistant principal. The ALSDE partners with CLASS to provide the Alabama New Principal Mentoring Program for our principals who are in their first and second year of the principalship. Remember, this is for people who have never been a principal before. This program is for 2 consecutive years where they are provided that one on one support from a trained mentor. Now, only a handful of states have a similar structure, and I'm very proud that Alabama is one of those states. Now, what we focus on in the program is for that mentor to build that connection with the mentee so that they can be that source of support to help build up their confidence, their competence, help them identify and articulate their core values as a school leader so that we're seeing that commitment and staying in the profession. So, all of this again is geared towards seeing those improvements in school climate and other academic outcomes, but also keeping our new people in the position so that you can maximize your impact. As a reminder, the APLDS evaluation system is being developed and implemented in 2 phases. Last year, the professional learning plan and the feedback was implemented, but there's lots of different puzzle pieces that need to come together to make an evaluation system very meaningful and impactful to support your professional growth. And those other pieces are currently being developed by a design team in partnership with an organization that helps support other states engage in this work. Let's talk more about the professional learning plan. This is language pulled directly from the law. And remember, we're focusing on those 3 areas of growth, achievement, and school climate. So, all principals and assistant principals are required to have at least one goal for growth or achievement or both, and at least one goal for school climate. Now, we know there are other indirect measures for school climate, such as attendance and discipline, but we encourage you to set these goals based off of the most direct measure of school climate that we know of, and that's perception data. And then you're going to have that plan for high quality professional learning from the state approved list. Now, when you're engaging in this process, you're walking through that reflective practice of where am I now? Where am I now in relation to those three areas: growth, achievement, and school climate? Then you're thinking about, okay, well, where do I want to be? So I'm determining those critical needs. What are the top priorities that we need to focus on this year based off of that data that we've pulled together to say, hey, yeah, these are our top priorities. And then we're going to set those targets and set those SMART goals. Then we're thinking through, well, how am I going to get there? And so at this point, you have two improvement plans that you're focused on. That's your professional learning plan. So that is your personal growth. But then you also have your ASIP, your school improvement plan. And those two should really be nested together. So if this is a focus area for you for your PLP, it really makes sense to streamline that with the ASIP as well. And also, if you have a principal and assistant principal at the same school, you have the same needs, you serve the same community. So it really makes sense to sit side by side and develop the same goals together. Now, what might be different is the professional learning you participate in. And then that next question is, well, how will I monitor my progress? Because we want to make sure, are we on track, and do that temperature check throughout the year. Are we on track towards meeting our goals and implementing these improvement plans as they were designed? And then lastly, you're reflecting on the effectiveness. What's that evidence of impact? Did we implement the plan like we said we would? And did we meet our goals? So this really is just engaging in a continuous improvement process. So let's go back to that question, where do we want to be? And you're looking at setting targets and you're setting those goals. We really want to make sure that they're SMART goals. So that means that they're very specific. So they're detailed and explicit. They're measurable. So we have some type of target, some type of percentage, and also we know the metrics. So what assessment data are we using? Are we talking about state assessment results, or are we talking about benchmark results? Are we identifying what surveys we're using? We want to make sure that the goal is attainable. So what can we actually accomplish within 1 year? We want it to be relevant and data based, right? It's based off of that evidence of need. So, really looking at that baseline data, that data over time to see what's an appropriate goal. And then time bound, again, what can be accomplished within 1 year, having that sense of urgency. We do have a school climate model in Alabama. Now, when we talk about school climate, we're talking about how members of the school community experience the school. So, those are our families, our students, our staff, our teachers. And in this model, which is based off of a national model, there are three big overarching domains, and that's engagement, safety, and environment. And up under those domains, there are subtopics. And those surveys that went out in spring 2025 for the first time measured these different domains in those different subtopics. So let's talk about how you can find those survey results from spring 2025 so that you can look at that data, use it as a baseline data to set your goals for the 25-26 school year. If you go to the website, the alabamaprincipals.org, there should be a tab at the top that says School Climate Surveys, and you're going to find step-by-step directions and tutorial of how to pull that data for your school so that you can set those goals. Now, if you also want to learn more about this new school climate model in Alabama, there are three different asynchronous online opportunities for you to engage in that model and to look at that survey data so that you're able to set a meaningful PLP goal. They're worth 8 APLDS clock hours each. So I encourage you to take a look at that opportunity if that's something that you need to deepen your practice in. Now let's talk about the technical side of the evaluation system. So you'll go to the AIM portal and you'll click on that TE application. And this should look similar to what you saw last year if you completed the APLDS evaluation system. There are 4 steps, but it looks different this year. There is an additional step. So now we're going from 4 steps to 5 steps. And we'll talk more about each of these steps and what that new third step looks like for you. Step 1 is where you select your school administrator position. This is similar to last year, only a slight revision to the options. So if you're an assistant principal, you're going to make sure you select that first option. Now, if you're a principal, you're going to be in one of 2 categories. You're going to be a new principal, or you're going to be considered an existing principal. Only click New Principal, that second option, if you've been identified as participating in the New Principal Mentoring Program. So that's in your first or second year of the principalship. We ask to make sure that you're selecting the right option because it's going to filter to what you should be completing in the evaluation system based off of what you select. And if that right option is not selected, then we'll have to go back and then reset your PLP. So just attend to that detail and making sure that you're selecting the right position. And if you're not sure, you can reach out to somebody in your district who serves as the APLDS district contact. Step 2 is the professional learning plan. This is the exact same as last year. There's 2 buttons. The one to the right is optional. That's participate in discussion. So this is where you can upload your baseline data to demonstrate that you have an appropriate SMART goal. You can also engage in dialogue with your evaluator by leaving comments, and you can discuss, is this an appropriate goal or not? Now, the one to the left, that is required. That is where you're going to actually add your APLDS goals for growth, achievement, school climate. So everyone is required to complete this step. Now, when you click on that button, it's going to look the same as last year. So you can select growth goal or achievement goal or both, and that will provide you the drop-down box for you to add your SMART goal. And then everybody will select or write at least one school climate goal. Now, you'll notice in this example, there are only 3 goals. And so we recommend no more than 3 to 5 so that you're really doing less but with greater focus, because beyond that, it can be really hard to maintain what those top priorities are. Now, also see that in the text box, it's just the SMART goal. So it's not this long paragraph, it's just very simple goal. But we do recommend that you get further guidance from your district, because these are just suggestions and recommendations that we're making from the state, but it's going to be your district and your evaluator who are reviewing and approving your PLP. And of course, you're going to set your goals, but also indicate your plan for participating in high quality professional learning from the state approved list. You'll also see a link to the 2025-26 state approved list. I encourage you to also think through this other piece of expected evidence, because the real critical part of this entire program working is that you're not just sitting in the PD and in that training and in that session, but you're applying that new learning. So think through what would be some expected evidence that will demonstrate the application of your new learning. How are you turning that around? So it's helpful to have in your evidence your transcript from PowerSchool PL, but really it's moving beyond that, right? How are you turning that information around? How is that informing your practice? So go ahead and plan for that when you're developing that second step. Now, some people reached out with questions last year, and this was a really good question to have, that, well, Anna, what if I put this in my PLP and then that session got canceled or something happened I wasn't able to attend? Hey, that's just a plan. You still want to be very strategic and targeted with identifying your professional learning that you're going to participate in, just like you are when identifying your goals. But there are plans, and plans do change. So you're not going to go back and open up your PLP once it's been submitted by the October 1st deadline. But what you can do is capture that in the evidence. So when we talk about that step, there's a place where you can add evidence for high quality professional learning. And this would be the opportunity to say and to indicate I was not able to attend this professional learning, but this is what I attended instead, and this is the evidence to demonstrate the application of my new learning. Now let's talk about that new step that's been added for the 2025-26 school year, and that's the certification of stipend eligibility. So once you've completed steps 1 and 2, this step will unlock for you. And you'll first find where we'll ask you some information about your experiences. But you'll also find that there are program orientation assurances. So you're watching the video, you understand what the expectations are to successfully complete the APLDS program for this year. And we've walked through a lot of those guidelines already. So it's just really another assurance and a check to make sure that you understand what's required to successfully complete the program and receive the Principal Act stipend if you're eligible, just so that we're all on the same page and everything is very clear of what needs to be done. Now, this is why it's called the certification of stipend eligibility, so that you're also very clear about what the criteria are to be eligible for the Principal Act stipend. And so the first part of the criteria is to hold a valid leadership certificate in Alabama by October 1st, 2025, making sure that you are assigned a principal or assistant principal staff position in the education directory and at the same school, and that you're also not assigned a superintendent or assistant superintendent staff position. If you are somebody who is in an interim position, unfortunately, you would not be eligible for the Principal Act stipend. You also need to be employed in the position no later than October 1st, 2025, and you must meet the law's definition of a principal or assistant principal. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we go over the legislative updates, but you can read that definition and see if that best reflects your roles and responsibilities. Something else is to make sure you know that if you are eligible for the Principal Act stipend, you have to remain at that school in the position for the entire school year in order to receive the stipend. So if we say it's April and you've completed at least 30 APLDS clock hours, you've completed the evaluation, you've completed the steps, but somebody decides to go ahead and retire early in April and not waiting to the end of the school year when the kids are still there, then unfortunately you would not be eligible to receive the Principal Act stipend. Because remember, we're wanting to build up your capacity, but also keep you there. And so that we're not seeing those disruptions in the learning environment. So you have to stay until the end of the year in order to receive the stipend. So here's an excerpt of what you're going to see just to give you a sense of how you'll interact with the platform. So it'll walk you through these questions, but it will be a dynamic experience. So if you select yes, then it'll move you on to the next question. But if you select no, it may take you to a different response, especially when it comes to asking those questions about your stipend eligibility and if you meet that criteria. Now, your evaluator will also complete the certification of stipend eligibility and walk through that criteria. Do you hold a valid leadership certificate? Do you meet the law's definition of a principal or an assistant principal? And that's again just so that everybody has a good understanding, including your evaluators, of what the criteria are in order to be eligible for the Principal Act stipend. So, step 4 is your evidence. So, this is where you're going to add evidence to show that progress towards meeting your goals. So, that's for growth, or achievement or both, and also for school climate. So you'll have a narrative box where you can write a summary of your findings, and then you can upload documents as well. Now, we really recommend that you go ahead and add evidence throughout the year. So you'll add maybe monthly or quarterly, but it's not going to be until the very end of the school year where you're going to actually hit submit at the bottom. So just making sure you're hitting save and you're not hitting submit in the portal, because that will close out this step, and that's not what we want. I also want to remind you that there's a box for high quality professional learning, and that's going to be where you add your evidence to demonstrate application of new learning. And I also encourage you to upload at the very end of the year, when you've completed all of your APLDS clock hours, upload the transcript from PowerSchool PL. And you can go to the website if you need some support in how to pull that. This step was also in place last year, and that's the certification of completion. So, this serves as an attestation statement to say, I have successfully completed all program requirements and I was eligible for the Principal Act stipend. So, that's the first option. There are two other options. The second is that I was eligible to receive the stipend, but I did not complete all program requirements, so maybe I only completed 28 APLDS clock hours. And then that third option is that you're completing the evaluation system, but you weren't eligible to receive the Principal Act stipend from the ALSDE. And that's okay. You can complete the evaluation system even if you're not eligible for the stipend. Now the process is that you're going to go in and select the correct option that best reflects your completion for the school year. And then the checks and balances is going to be that your evaluator goes in and also provides an attestation statement of saying, I hereby certify that yes, they were eligible and successfully completed all program requirements. It's very important that the correct options are selected, and what the evaluator selects is the same as what the evaluatee selects. Because if those don't match, then we'll have to open it back up to you all, and that's going to delay the process for you to go in and select the correct option. So please attend to those details and read those options. And we did have that issue at the end of last year, and it was just human error and not really attending to those details and accidentally selecting the wrong thing. So when we go to look at the data to do the stipend allocations, we are pulling the transcript from PowerSchool PL to see how many APLDS clock hours, and then we're pulling in that data for that last step. Did you certify, and did your evaluator certify, and do they match? And that's how you're going to get the stipend. So I just want to make sure we're paying attention to that last step and selecting the correct option so that that doesn't slow the process down for you. Let's talk about important deadlines for the 25-26 school year. So your first deadline is October 1st, the same as last year, and that's your deadline to complete steps 1, 2, and 3 of the APLDS evaluation system in AMTE. As a reminder, step 1 was selecting your school administrator position, step 2 was your PLP, and then step 3 is the new step, certification of stipend eligibility. So it's not only needs to be completed by you, but also your evaluator. So you may want to do that much earlier so that your evaluator has time to meaningfully review your PLP and to give you that feedback. Your district may also have different internal deadlines that are sooner, just to make sure that they have time to sign off on everything. Then in February or March, we will be a 2-month window. You'll make sure to send out those new surveys. So the survey will go out to you for your instructional staff to complete, for students, and for families. And then there'll be a survey for you to complete as well. Now that data is only shared at the state level in aggregate form. And then by the end of April, that's when we'll be wrapping up our mentoring program. And then remember, by the end of May, that's when at least 30 APLDS clock hours must be completed. Now, for the other steps of the evaluation system, steps 4, your evidence, and then step 5, certification of completion. There are two deadlines here. And so at this point, there are two groups of people: those who are retiring at the end of the year, but you're still going to finish out that school year, but you know that you're going to be retiring once the kids leave, and then those who aren't retiring. Now, if somebody is retiring, we need to make sure that we go ahead and process your stipend sooner. So you have no later than May 1st to complete all of those steps. So you need to also make sure you tell your APLDS district contact that you're retiring and that everything has been completed, because the process will be you tell them, that individual will tell me, then I'll go ahead and start pulling the data from PowerSchool PL and then from the AMTE platform, and then start working on the stipend allocation so that we can get that stipend sent in May. Because this stipend does count towards retirement, so the highest average 3 years within the last 10, but it won't count unless you're paid the stipend before your retirement date. So there is a sense of urgency, but I'm not going to know to pull that data or to go ahead and process that stipend allocation for you unless somebody tells me. Now we have the other group of folks who are not retiring. And so this will, the process will be that you're not going to be receiving a stipend allocation individually. It's going to be when everybody else in the district has completed all the steps. So if that happens before that deadline, which is technically the third week of June, if it happens before then, and we do highly recommend you go ahead and complete everything in May. In fact, your district may have a different internal deadline, so please follow their guidance. But the process is once we find out if it's before that June deadline, your APLDS district contact will reach out to me and say, all right, we've completed everything. You can go ahead and start pulling the data and start processing the stipend allocation for our district. And that takes some time. It will take about 6 to 8 weeks to go and pull that data and get the stipends ready. Those stipends will be sent to the district, to the CSFO, and then they'll disperse from there. So it is a process, and that's why we say if we can go ahead and start working on it in May, that means that you could potentially get paid sooner. So you have just heard a lot of information. So let's recap to make sure you know what the program requirements are so that you can get the Principal Act stipend if you're eligible. So first, all principals and assistant principals need to complete at least 30 APLDS clock hours from the state approved list. All school administrators need to complete all 5 steps of the APLDS evaluation system. Remember, we used to have 4, now we have 5. And if you've been identified as a new principal in your first or second year of the principalship, you will also need to complete a state approved mentoring program. Thank you again for listening. And most importantly, thank you for the incredible work that you do every single day as a school or district leader. You are making a lasting impact in the lives of students, families, and school communities across the state of Alabama. What you do matters. So thank you for engaging in this supportive work. And if there's anything that we can do at the State Department to help you, we are here. Please don't hesitate to reach out.